Last Christmas, I was invited by my friend Josh to spend the holiday with his family. His dad, Mike, is a well-known local businessman who struck it rich several years prior when he sold his chain of car dealerships to a large corporation. Josh's family had money to burn. Their house was huge and beautifully decorated, filled with tasteful furniture and expensive art. As soon as I walked in, I could tell that there were dozens of cameras hidden around the house, but I didn't think much of it. I put it down to their over-enforced security system. I'd heard about it before. Anyway, we had a good time for the first couple of days. We watched movies, played board games, and drank. On the second day, though, the weather turned sour and we got stuck inside. Josh suggested that we play a game. Dad has this old gaming console hidden away somewhere. It's definitely worth a look, he said. His dad, Mike, seemed hesitant at first, but eventually he came around and agreed to dig it out from the attic. It wasn't long before Mike returned with a wooden box in his hands. He set it on the coffee table and opened it up, revealing an Atari Punk console and two controllers. "Here's all that's left of my youth," he said with a dry chuckle. But I couldn't help but notice the dark look that crossed his face right after. It was gone within a split second, though, and I figured that I was just imagining things. Mike handed me the other controller and we got started. Now, I'm no gamer, so I was terrible at the game, which made me a laughing stock in front of Josh and his friends. After a few minutes of being humiliated, I asked if I could change to a different one. "Can we play something where I have a better chance of winning?" "We only have this one game," Mike replied, "but if you don't want to play, then that's fine." Before I could respond, though, Josh chimed in. "Come on, man, suck it up. You can do this." Encouraged by his confidence, I decided to stay and play out the round. We didn't speak much during the game, which was probably for the best because I really had no idea what I was doing. The graphics were simple and the gameplay was slow, and somehow the whole thing was giving me a headache. Finally, the game ended and we sat in silence for a few seconds. Suddenly, the power went out and we were plunged into darkness. Josh screamed and hid under the coffee table. Mike, on the other hand, remained perfectly still. Then he started laughing. "That's pretty funny," he said, "but now I gotta go to the basement and reset the breaker." As he fumbled around for the flashlight, I stood up and tried to leave the room. Suddenly, I felt something wet trickle down my leg. I froze and stared at the floor. It was blood. I looked back at Mike, who was staring at me with a horrified expression on his face. "You're bleeding," he whispered. Not knowing what else to do, I followed him to the basement. As we descended the stairs, I saw that the source of the wound was a gash running up the middle of my calf. I could see bone and muscle. It was deep enough that I could stick my fingers into it. Looking back up at Mike, I saw that he had taken off his jacket and he was holding it out to me. "Hold this," he said, "and try not to make it worse." I did as he told me, wrapping the bloody jacket around my leg. "I think we need to get you stitched up," he said. "Stay here while I call 911. As he dialed the number, I asked him how this could have happened. How did I cut myself? I didn't even feel anything. He looked over at me and his eyes widened. "You don't remember?" he asked. At that moment, the front door burst open and a paramedic team rushed in. They loaded me onto a stretcher and wheeled me out of the house. The last thing I remember was hearing Mike yell, "Wait, you can't take him. He's not done with us yet." I woke up in a hospital bed. My leg was heavily bandaged and painkillers were coursing through my veins. When I tried to sit up, though, I noticed that my blanket had been pulled back and I was completely naked except for my shoes. Suddenly, I heard a knock at the door. The attending physician entered and smiled at me. "Odd, you're awake." "I'm Dr. Reed," he said, extending his hand. I shook it weakly. "Where am I? What happened?" He explained that I had been brought in with a deep laceration to my lower leg. "It's a miracle that you didn't sever your artery. If you had, you would have bled out long before the paramedics arrived. As it is, we were able to reattach the muscle and bone. You'll make a full recovery, but you won't be walking normally ever again." He paused, noticing my confused expression. "Do you know what caused the injury?" I shook my head. Dr. Reed sighed and explained that I had come in with a ligature mark around my leg, meaning that whatever had cut me had used some sort of binding to tighten the wound. "It was probably an accident," he said. "Some sort of industrial accident at home." He must have seen the question forming on my lips because he added, Your friend didn't say anything, but I'm guessing you don't live with anyone who uses those sorts of tools. I forced a weak smile and nodded. Yeah, you could say that. I lie. Later that day, after my friends and Dr. Reed had all left, I was alone in the hospital room. As the night wore on, I kept replaying the events of the previous evening over and over in my mind, trying to figure out what had happened. The more I thought about it, the more it seemed like there was something very wrong with Mike. The next morning, I called my girlfriend and she picked me up from the hospital and drove me home. I told her everything that had happened, but I left out the part about Mike. She listened patiently and then gave me a hug. "It'll be alright," she said. "Just take it easy for a few days and you'll be back to normal in no time." That was a relief to hear, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. When I got home, I took out my phone and called Josh to see how his dad was doing. "Hey, how's Mike? How is he handling the fact that he almost killed me?" I asked jokingly. On the other side of the line, Josh sounded confused. "What are you talking about? What happened to you?" "I haven't spoken to my dad since the paramedics arrived, and that's when it hit me. Mike hadn't been acting strangely. He genuinely didn't know what had happened to me. I told him about the cut on my leg and the ligature mark, but he insisted that it must have been an accident. Dad isn't violent," he said. "He would never hurt someone intentionally." Still, I couldn't help but feel that something was off, so I went to visit him at his house. He let me in and I told him that I wanted to talk to him about what happened to me. "I've already called the cops," he said. "They're gonna find whoever did this." I could see that he was trying to be strong for me, but his voice cracked a little bit. Clearly, he was still shaken by what had happened. "I'm sorry," I said, "but I can't help but wonder if you had something to do with it." "You knew I was gonna ask you about that," he said, sighing. "Look, I don't know what happened to you. Whoever did this knew what they were doing. They cut you with a surgical precision. I'm a doctor, and I couldn't even do that myself." He paused. "But if you want to hear a horror story, here's one. Years ago, when I was still practicing, there was this guy who came in with a similar wound. He claimed that he'd cut himself while fixing a boat, but I could tell that he was lying. The cut was too clean. I asked him point blank if he was sure, and he just smiled at me and said, 'No, I did it myself.' I don't want to hurt him, but sometimes you have to do what you have to do." Mike went silent, staring off into the distance. "Who was it?" I asked quietly. "Who did it?" He slowly turned his head back to face me. "Me," he whispered. Before I could respond, the lights flickered and went out, plunging us into darkness. When they came back on, Mike was gone. I ran to the window and looked out. Down below, I saw a figure walking away from the house. It was wearing a familiar brown jacket. I called the police right then and there, but they never found Mike or whoever did this to me. To this day, I'm left with this gaping hole in my leg, and whenever I see a brown jacket, I can't help but feel a chill run down my spine.